Hey everyone, this is Keith Scott from out in Sydney, Australia. I'm one of the voices of Bullwinkle J. Moose. It's time to watch Relentless and Unstoppable. And so give it up for your main hosts, Douglas Kenny and Andy McPhee.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Kenny and welcome to Relentless and Unstoppable. We have another amazing guest coming on the channel today, so please hit like and subscribe. And after this episode, please stay tuned to the RNU channel for more amazing guests. Let's get this on!
Hey everybody, how you doing? Just a quick little share of why I started Relentless and Unstoppable. It was for one very simple reason, because of Doug Kenny. Nothing to do with me at all, zero. I was just coaching Doug, and he took on the coaching and mentoring, and he made all the changes. He took all the suggestions from his parents as well as my coaching, but it was all about Doug, his breakthrough and his weight loss, his willingness to accept that he is dealing with high functioning autism and other issues, but he's never quit, he's never given up. So we did one interview with him to share his story, and then we decided to start interviewing other people. And Doug has now taken over the whole channel, and he does all the interviews, he runs everything. He's just an amazing young man. So RNU was born from simply what an amazing young man Doug is, and his story needed to be shared.
Yeah, you know that the aortic, I'm sure you know this already, but aortic valves can, if they get them replaced through surgery, can prevent dissections, because that's how Arnold Schwarzenegger avoided a dissection, was because he had a bicuspid valve, which for those who don't know is a valve in the aorta that has 2 leaflets rather than 3, which reduces the blood flow. Since Arnold Schwarzenegger put a lot of energy into his workouts and his films, it meant that eventually he was going to have surgery to prevent any chances of heart damage and dissection. And he did so, and he's thriving now, you know?
He is. And you're so smart. I'm so impressed. I really am very impressed. You've done your homework. But that's true. There's a couple different issues with the valve. Bicuspid valve is something you're born with. It's a congenital heart defect, and that can impact the blood flow, and which may cause an aneurysm in the most crucial section of the aorta, which is the ascending, coming directly out of the heart. The aorta is a candy cane shaped organ now. It's now an organ, not just a vessel. And they say it's an organ because there's a few different zones that treatment can be very different in these different zones. So, you know, they've deemed it an organ, but not only can you have a bicuspid issue, you can have an aortic valve that has stenosis, which means it's stiffening due to some deposits, or you can have one that regurgitates, which means it's floppy and blood flow is going backwards into the heart. So all of these things not only can cause some issues with the heart, they can cause an aneurysm, which could lead to a dissection or, God forbid, a rupture.
So from what I've read, aortic dissections can be fatal because of either organ failure or because of a ruptured aorta. Is that right?
That's true. So aortic dissections, depending on where that dissection originated from, can have a high likelihood for death or mortality. If it ruptures out and you're in the abdominal area, you may have an opportunity to make it to a hospital and be able to have surgery. But if it's in the ascending closest to the heart, you have to think of the volume of oxygenated blood that's coming out to create all of that blood flow to the whole entire body. It's so much right there that it can be fatal. Doesn't mean it always will, but it can be, which is why you want to have this your aorta checked out, especially if you know that there's a family medical history, or if someone in your family passed away suddenly and just chalk it up to a heart attack, but there's no autopsy. You need to think about that a little bit and mention those things to your physician and let them work with you to decide what type of monitoring you need.
Yeah, and that's what happened to John Ritter, because he got diagnosed with a heart attack mistakenly. And the fact that they treated that rather than the aorta is what allowed it to get worse. And then he wasn't able to be saved.
Right. And nobody knew that a family member of his had also probably had a dissection, because this wasn't nobody put the pieces of the puzzle together as much as they do today. Now, of course, his sons have been looked at, and I'm sure they're being monitored, and I'm sure everything is fine. And that's the good thing. So when you are diagnosed with an aneurysm, people need to realize, as scary as that sounds, and I have two of them. I'm just like them. I'm watching and waiting to see when I have to have surgery again. That is the best position you can be in, because now you're on someone's radar. They know that you have this disease process going on, and now they can monitor you, and they can intervene with medication usually, and step in when necessary for any type of surgical, intervention if they want. So that's good. You want someone to know about something so they can keep after you and then fix it before it becomes a problem.
Yeah, and last year I actually lost a couple people I know to aortic dissection. I had a high school friend lose his father to it at like 64 years old. And then I learned that a former friend of mine from Colorado died at 23 from an aortic dissection. It's like, whoa.
That's amazing. Yeah. Which, when you know so many people that have that, it doesn't seem as rare to you, but statistically, it still is considered a rare occurrence. And we're trying to make it even more rare by having people be, diagnosed earlier. That's the whole concept behind wanting people to think aorta.
Yeah, for sure. And this is something we need to always raise awareness on, because hopefully, we can't stop how the aorta is formed when you're born. But if we know enough about it, we can prevent this from happening.
That's true. And then the greatest part would be, it's so scientific, it's like Star Trek. But if you found out that you had a certain syndrome or condition, and you wanted to have a family, and you could look for that genetic mutation and do some kind of IVF and pluck that little bent piece of your DNA and pluck it right out, then you might be able to prevent your child from having that. It's the unknown is incredible. And just the advances I've seen in my last 10 years with this are just phenomenal in both how many more genes have been identified, as well as the different type of treatments that are now available.
Yeah. Since you sort of have a idea of the aorta and aortic disease and heart defects from what it appears, do you know that heart defect where there's like a hole in the heart that causes the two types of blood to mix, Mm-hmm. Do you know anything about how that works and what the consequences are? Because I've looked it up and I still don't understand it.
So I'm not super well versed on matters of the heart, but aorta, yes. But I think you're talking about, which would be described sometimes from a physician as a murmur, but upon further investigation, they discover there's a hole in the heart. That's something people have been born with. Sometimes that will require a patch or some type of intervention. And then other times the person goes on to live their life and nothing's done. It really just depends on, I would assume, if someone's symptomatic, how large they can detect that hole might be. But yeah, no, I just know it's 4 chambers and a bunch of other valves. That's about it when it comes to the heart.
Yeah. Have you met any big names involved in the aortic awareness and all that?
So, Aortic Hope has collaborated in the past on a few things with the John Ritter Foundation. We are always so impressed with the work that they focus on and that they're doing so well, which is research and the John Ritter Research Program. So we're always there to support that mission. As far as other, celebrities or people, I know I met one individual. I don't know if I'm going to butcher the last name, John Darros. Yes, I think he was a player with the Saints or Arizona, and I can't keep track of that. I'm not like a sports person, but he had a career-altering diagnosis of an aortic aneurysm, and it ended his football career. And then he was kind of involved in magic, and he was on the Ellen DeGeneres show a couple times and on America's Got Talent. And I did hear him speak a very motivational talk about not only this, just his life and his childhood. What happened to him, this ailment was a blip in the fabric of what's molded him. And so to listen to how he handled all of that adversity, it's always inspirational to listen to how other people handle their challenges. And I was reading up a little bit about you, and I was like, okay, now I'm going to be asked if I'm relentless and unstoppable like Doug. And then I have to think about my answer. So I read, and I was really impressed that you put this together to give other people an opportunity to talk about what they do. But no, I can't say that I have met anybody else. but I'm waiting. It'll happen. I think everybody's a celebrity. Everybody who experiences this and lives to tell, they're so super important in their own right. They really are, right? So that maybe people think I'm a celebrity. I have no idea. I think we're all a bunch of celebrities in this community.
Yeah, for sure. I'll get to something regarding the channel in a sec, but for those who don't know, John Ritter's wife, Amy Yazbek, is the founder of the John Ritter Foundation. After John passed away, Amy Yazbek went through the aortic research and created the John Ritter Foundation, and she also filed a lawsuit against the hospital and two doctors that, from what was alleged, were responsible for John's passing away. Not directly, but with some medical malpractice allegations. And the hospital settled out of court, but the doctors fought the lawsuit, and they ended up winning after promoting the argument that even if they tested John sooner, it wouldn't have made a difference because of his genes. And whether that's the truth is a topic of debate, but nonetheless, the work that Amy Yazbek has done is incredible, and so is Carin with the Aorta Hope,
Well, so with Aortic Hope, we're all in different lanes of this highway going in the same direction. And so the John Ritter Foundation is really looking for a way to prevent this from happening, which is very proactive. They're doing it through genetic research and awareness and educating people. There's another organization called Rock from the Heart, and they really focus on valve disease, aortic valve disease, and aneurysms, but they do their work through having a twice-a-year symposium, an educational event, and a rock concert. They've had Night Ranger, Grand Funk Railroad, Sebastian Bach, some pretty well-known, and Rick Springfield, but you probably don't know him, but I loved him. That's a person. But she's had some really great talent, which really pulls a lot of people together, and they get to meet each other for the first time in the community, become educated, make friends. And Aortic Hope is very reactive. We are the catcher's mitt of providing the support and the education and the awareness. And Think Aorta is kind of the top of that umbrella, because everybody's thinking about the aorta when they're doing what they're doing with their missions. And Think Aorta really focuses on educating physicians. You wouldn't believe, in the top rated hospitals. I just spoke to a physician I'm not going to mention the name, of a very well-known hospital in California that had, in the ED, they sent a patient home that was having a dissection. They ended up going to another hospital where they too were given a stroke test, and then they realized they should do a CT. So even in the most well-known hospitals, the ED, the doctors are not being really well educated on why you need to ask certain questions and put the pieces of the puzzle together and order the CT scan. So that's the mission of Think Aorta, is to really educate EMTs to emergency room physicians and primary care for everybody. Everybody needs to understand this is major. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to lead to someone's having a dissection, but think about the aorta. Just think when you're presented with somebody with undiagnosed chest pain.
I know one thing: if I ever have some pain in my chest and there's a chance it's a heart attack, no matter what it is, I'm always going to check with the doctor and say, make sure that this is an aortic dissection before you go into the heart attack. You know what I mean?
Well, so they'll be able to tell the heart attack like right away off of an EKG, which is good because you won't tell if it's a dissection from an EKG. And an EKG is like 30 seconds for that test. They will not put somebody in a CT scan for a heart attack. They'll check your blood, which could take an hour or two to get back what's called a D-dimer test. But if you have any family medical history of somebody who passed suddenly, people who have heart disease, people who have had strokes, high blood pressure, diabetes, things of this nature, or especially aneurysms of the brain, aneurysms anywhere, you want to tell that physician, if you're feeling chest pain and you know this is not something you've ever felt that goes away with a gas X or a Tums, and this is something different, you need to go into the ED and you need to say, I have a family medical history. I'd like you to check to make sure it's not my aorta. And, you might have pushback if you haven't identified an aneurysm, or maybe you won't have pushback and the physicians will say, yeah, they'll probably check your blood pressure on both sides of your body first and see if there's a major difference. If there's a lot of physical signs that could lead somebody to be thinking, this is probably the aorta, but there's never anything wrong with asking somebody to check it out and make sure you educate them on your history.
Yeah, for sure. If I remember hearing right from my mother, my grandfather Snook, who's my other grandfather, he did die from a dissection of sorts. I don't know if it was caused by aortic disease, but I was made aware it was a dissection, and I was made aware that he had serious addictions to alcohol and tobacco, and so it's like that might have weakened the aorta when he probably wouldn't have even gotten it without it. That's what I'm sort of suspecting, you know?
Right. Possibility, but it never hurts to let your physician know and let them make that determination if they should just do a baseline. There's different guidelines that the physicians have on what's the best age to do that type of, testing. And, but you would have those conversations. Anybody would with their personal physician.
Gee, that's all we have for Relentless and Unstoppable. So tune into the next episode to hear more amazing stories from amazing guests. This is Keith Scott from Sydney, Australia saying so long, and I'm smarter than the average bear. Gee.